The United continues on its expansion conquest with the Little Rock Trojans, bringing membership up to 9. The UAC and the A-Sun will be under one consortium, but 2 auto bids. And one of the benefits of this consortium is out-of-conference scheduling across many sports. For example, if you were to look at basketball with the memberships as they currently are, here's what that scheduling consortium could look like. Based off crossover games, that would be a 6-hour bus trip or less. And as the A-Sun and United add more of those Mid-South schools, those crossover games will be easier to fill out. Looking at athletic expenses, everyone's data here will be from the Knight Commission, with the exception of Abilene Christian, as the Knight Commission only has public schools. Abilene Christians will be from the Department of Education. And the top bar will be isolating each school's football budget, so everyone's comparing apples to apples with non-football budgets. For non-football budgets, Tarleton and Austin P would be tied at the top, followed by UTA, and then Eastern Kentucky and Abilene Christian. Little Rock at $15.2 million will come out right in the middle of the United in 6th. Men's basketball budgets per the Department of Education, Little Rock at $2.85 million would be number 1. Abilene Christian, UTA, Austin P, Eastern Kentucky, and Tarleton would also all be in that $2 to $3 million range. Looking at 5-year KenPom, Abilene Christian would be in first at 158th, Eastern Kentucky second in the top 200, and they would be followed by Tarleton and UTA in the top 215. And then you have North Alabama at 245, and Little Rock would be 6th in United at 271st in Division 1. As a collective using future alignments, the United would come out in 23rd in 5-year KenPom. Expanding that to 10-year KenPom, UTA would lead the United at 149th in Division 1, followed by Abilene Christian at 198th, then Tarleton at 212th, Eastern Kentucky at 229th, and then Little Rock would be the median school in the United in 5th for the league and 231st in Division 1. Using the future alignments of all conferences, the United would come out in 22nd in 10-year KenPom. The OVC was 29th, so Little Rock will be leapfrogging 7 conference spots in 10-year KenPom. Having a presence in Texas was important to Little Rock, as their undergraduate enrollment declined by over 2,000 students, over 28%, in a 5-year span from 2017 to 2022. In fact, if you look at the first-year high school graduate students at Little Rock in 2010, less than 1% came from Texas. Fast forward 12 years to 2022, and nearly 6% of Little Rock's first-year high school graduate students came from Texas. And you can see the big decline in the amount of in-state students from Arkansas, declined from 549 first-year high school graduate students in 2010 to 384 in 2022. So Little Rock would like to keep tapping more into Texas to help replenish that decline in in-state students from Arkansas. Reuniting with UT Arlington is also important to Little Rock, as over 5% of Little Rock alumni move to the DFW area after they graduate. Little Rock hopes that by establishing more of a presence in the DFW area, that they will reconnect and re-engage with some of those alumni that have relocated to DFW. From the UAC perspective, Little Rock is a convenient non-revenue sports bus trip. Obviously, Central Arkansas is only half an hour away, but you have North Alabama under 5 hours, UTA 5 hours, Austin P 5.5, Tarleton 6.5, and West Georgia and Abilene Christian 7.5. Little Rock plays in a terrific facility, the Jack Stevens Center, 5,600 capacity, built in 2005. The UAC as a whole has a handful of new or newish arenas. Tarleton State is opening an 8,000-seat arena this year. Austin P opened a 5,500-seat arena a couple years ago. Eastern Kentucky just renovated Alumni Coliseum. Abilene Christian had a full-scale renovation to the Moody Coliseum a few years ago. North Alabama renovated Flowers Hall about 7 years back. UTA opened their arena back in 2012. West Georgia opened an arena in 2009. And finally, Central Arkansas is in the early stages of planning a new arena. You might recognize this slide from a video 4 or 5 months ago. It was about United potential expansion possibilities. Note this was made before Tennessee Tech joined the SoCon, and back when it was still up in the air whether any Southland schools might make the jump to the United, which now it looks like we can rule out any Southland schools. If we look at the FCS 4-year computer ratings, Tennessee Martin is 21st, SEMO is 32nd. Those two are rumored to join the UAC next. We'll see if that comes to fruition. For 10-year Ken Pom, Little Rock was third out of all these schools, and we know Stephen F. Austin was not willing to join, which left Little Rock as one of the best options available. And looking at men's basketball budgets in the bottom right, Little Rock at $2.8 million had the highest men's basketball budget of all the possible candidates back then. Little Rock moved up to Division I in 1979 into the Trans-America Athletic Conference, which we know today is the ASUN, and they would be there for a dozen years until 1991. Little Rock would spend a full generation in the Sun Belt, a total of 31 years from 1991 all the way to 2022, when the Sun Belt nudged out its non-football members, Little Rock and UTA. Little Rock would end up in the OVC, where they will have a stopgap for 4 years until joining the United in 2026. As for the OVC, they are now down to 9 members after losing Tennessee Tech and now Little Rock this year. You have a Missouri, Illinois, Indiana core of 6 schools, and then UT Martin and Tennessee State handing out as Southern outliers, and Morehead State as an Eastern outlier. Of course, that road trip to Eastern Kentucky and Morehead State used to be called the Valley of Death in the OVC back when EKU was in the league. The OVC is entering a danger zone where their stability is about to be a bit vulnerable. You have a high danger threat of UT Martin and SEMO joining the UAC. That's already been reported as a possibility by Extra Points. And if that becomes official in the near future, the OVC will be down to 7 members. And you have a trio of mid-danger threats that may or may not happen, like would Tennessee State join the SWAC, given that there would be no other Tennessee schools left if UT Martin were to leave? Would the Summit League be interested in getting into the St. Louis area with Lindenwood, as the Summit League is at 9 members? Lindenwood theoretically could give them some insurance if someone like St. Thomas or Denver were to leave. Would Morehead State end up in the ASUN, given the ASUN is at 7 members and is certainly about to expand? You have a couple of low danger threats, which are theoretically plausible but don't have any credible rumors behind them. Like, would the ASUN want to add both Southern Illinois Edwardsville and Southern Indiana? Or would the Horizon League move to 14 with SIUE and USI? And finally, there's 2 OVC schools that I would consider in the clear. They're no threat to be invited to another D1 league in EIU and WIU. Charleston Mattoon, where EIU is, was really important back in 1858 with Lincoln and Douglas, but it's probably not an important location to conferences today. And WIU is located in the heart of beloved Forgotonia, but that's also probably not a region that conferences are trying to get into. Now, the pertinent bylaws: a multi-sport conference needs 7 active Division I members, and keep in mind that you are not an active Division I member until you complete a reclassification period. That reclassification period is now 3 years instead of 4. Also, a multi-sport conference needs 12 Division I sports, 6 men's sports, and 6 women's sports, including 2 other women's team sports aside from basketball. And if a league falls out of compliance, they are given a grace period of 2 years to get back into compliance. And that grace period of 2 years becomes doubly important because the NCAA just passed a moratorium on Division II call-ups. The moratorium goes through 2027, so a D2 school that did not apply by August 5th cannot begin their transition until 27-28. And while Matt Brown has reported that 3 Division II schools beat that deadline, he's also said that none were for the OVC. And this is all important because the OVC needs 7 active D1 members in 2027-2028, as Division II call-ups will not count as an active D1 member until 2030-2031. So if the OVC were to fall out of compliance starting with 27-28, that grace period would only last 27-28 and 28-29, and then by 29-30, that grace period is over, and no D2 call-up will be an active D1 member by then. So the OVC's life pretty much depends on having 7 active D1 members in that 2027-2028 academic year. As it stands, the OVC currently has 9, but it's expected that SEMO and UT Martin will depart for the UAC relatively soon, leaving them with 7. The OVC might use the departing schools' exit fees to help entice other Division I schools. They'll probably target Bellarmine and Lipscomb, but that is a Hail Mary that is highly unlikely to succeed. For a myriad of reasons. First, 10-year KenPom. The future ASUN is 23rd, while the future OVC is 29th. And it's extremely rare that you'll see schools drop down half a dozen spots in the basketball conference rankings. I know Western Illinois did it from the Summit League to the OVC, but that was an exception. Then if you look at men's basketball budgets, the ASUN basketball budgets across the board are higher than the OVC budgets. The ASUN just has location and demographics that are more desirable to university presidents and athletic departments for recruitment, removing Nashville from the equation since they're in both the ASUN and the OVC. If you're Bellarmine and Lipscomb, you're comparing the ASUN, which has 4 Florida schools plus Charlotte, although who knows how long Queens will still be in Division I. And you compare that to the locations and demographics of the OVC. You have a couple schools in suburban St. Louis, which is good, Evansville, Indiana, which is good, but other than that, it's very rural with Moorhead, Kentucky, Charleston, Illinois, Macomb, Illinois. It appears SEMO and UT Martin will be gone by then. And the ASUN has a scheduling consortium with the UAC that will really help alleviate travel costs. As the UAC and ASUN currently stand, that little graphic is a hypothetical scheduling matrix for basketball for Bellarmine and Lipscomb. But if SEMO and UT Martin join the UAC as expected, that's more regional games available for Bellarmine and Lipscomb in that scheduling consortium. So if you compare the number of regional games for Bellarmine and Lipscomb in that consortium and compare it with the OVC, it's really not going to be that far apart. My conclusion is the OVC's likely only realistic pathway, if SEMO and UT Martin do indeed leave, is for 6 of the 7 remaining members not to be poached for the 27-28 academic year. And if they're somehow able to retain all 7, then they won't even need Chicago State. But if one were to leave, then use the departing exit fees to pay off Chicago State's NEC exit fee to entice them to come. And finally, have a couple Division II schools start their transition once the moratorium expires in 2027. So fast forward to 27-28, theoretically, in an ideal world, the OVC would want to retain Eastern Illinois for 1, Western for 2, USI for 3, SIUE for 4, Lindenwood for 5. Hopefully they could hang on to either Tennessee State or Moorhead State, then bribe Chicago State over for number 7, and then start the transition for 2 Division II call-ups. That way, even if another school leaves in 28-29, that 2-year grace period will still take them through 29-30, and by the time they hit 20-30-31, the OVC will be in compliance with NCAA bylaws.